Whew, kind of nervous for this one. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. This is going to be part 2 talking about Beckham's journey and where he's at today. Obviously, I just need to start out by saying thank you so much for every single person that took the time to reach out to me after watching Beckham's first video. I can't even tell you how many DMs I got on Instagram and how many people texted me that know me personally. It just truly meant so much to me to receive so much love and support, and it made me way less fearful to make this video and just made me want to continue opening up to you guys, because you are so wonderful at protecting not only my emotions, but Beckham's emotions. I know that right now he obviously doesn't understand that I'm talking about him or telling his story, but eventually he's going to be old enough and understand that I put his life on the internet and I was willing to share his story because he is so inspiring and so brave. And I'm just really grateful that you guys handle that so gracefully and so carefully. And just from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you so much. I'm really excited to film this video, and I didn't think that I would be. I thought I'd be a little bit nervous. It's taken me a couple years to work up the courage to even talk about this, but I am excited, and I'm so grateful that you guys are back to talk more about Beckham and to hear more about how he's doing. So as you can tell by the title, today I'm going to dive into special needs, the diagnosis that Beckham got, and what his life is like, what it's like being his mom, what it's like having a little boy that has cerebral palsy. When Hunter and I left the NICU, we honestly were pretty naive to the fact that Beckham could be diagnosed with special needs later in his life. I thought that when we left the hospital that I would know then and there if Beckham had any sort of special needs diagnosis. I also have never had a sibling or even a cousin that was diagnosed with any sort of special needs. So I was pretty naive, and I'm totally willing to admit that. I, of course, had just like a baseline of love for others that didn't have the abilities that I have, but I just didn't understand it. I was totally uneducated on the subject, and I wish that I wouldn't have been, but I've learned so much and I've grown so much, and it just makes me emotional even talking about children that have unique abilities. I'm just grateful that my world and my eyes have completely opened up because of Beckham. So like I mentioned, back in the NICU, I thought that we would get a diagnosis then and there, but obviously we didn't. When we were taking him home, we were told that there was a chance that he would be delayed in all of his learning and all of his abilities, which was of course normal because he was born so early. I didn't realize that we could start to see signs of specific diagnosis coming up. And I also just want to say, if I say anything incorrect in this video or anything that's not proper, I am totally open to being corrected. Please just comment below and help me stay educated. I really respect and love everybody's opinion and the education that others have on the subject that is far greater than mine. So again, please feel free to correct me if I say anything incorrect. In order to stay on top of Beckham's development, we were assigned to what's called the neonatal follow-up clinic. So that means that every 3 months after we took Beckham home from the NICU, we would take him back up to Primary Children's, which is like a really big children's hospital here in Utah. And it's known for having some of the best doctors in the country. We are so blessed to live near that hospital. They've taken such great care of him. We would take him up every 3 months and he would be assessed by the neonatal doctors. So when Beckham got home in September, we were basically just working on getting him off of oxygen because he came home with needing oxygen, and he was also on a G-tube. So he was feeding entirely by tube and was also having assistance with breathing. So we were just focused on basically becoming new parents and getting everything down with the G-tube correctly. We also had in-home doctors, so we had home health coming to help us, and Kids on the Move, which is a program that gives you occupational therapists, physical therapists. Beckham also has a vision specialist that he works with. They were all actually able to come to our home so that I could stay where I was comfortable, and they were doing assessments on him, and they were just kind of helping us get in the groove of helping Beckham learn basic skills for the age that he was. When it came time for us to take him up to primaries for that first appointment about 3 months after he got home, it was on January 7th. Hunter and I went up there together, and I seriously was like skipping into the hospital. Beckham was off of his oxygen, which was a huge win. And I just thought we were going up there for them to tell me that my baby was healthy, he was happy. You have to keep in mind that Beckham is my first child. I had no idea what was quote unquote normal. I had no idea like what I should be looking for in terms of his development. I just knew that Beckham was going to be delayed in his development, so it didn't concern me that he wasn't doing things at 6 months old that a typical 6-month-old baby should do, because gestationally he was 3 months if you were going off of his corrected age. Meaning if he was born in September when he should have been, then he would have only been 3 or 4 months at the time, not 6 or 7 months. So we get to the hospital and we go into a room with a couple doctors. These are the same doctors that followed him throughout the NICU, so we were really familiar with them. I absolutely love and adore the doctors that he has up at primaries. So we go into this room and they start to do an assessment on him. They laid him on a little mat and they just basically watched him while he played. And something that I had noticed is that Beckham liked to do like little bicycle kicks. So when we would lay him on the ground on his back, he would go kick, 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 kick with his little legs. And I would always say like, oh, Baba, are you like running a race? Or are you swimming? Or are you biking? Like I would kind of play with him. And I had no idea that that was something that could be a sign of cerebral palsy or a muscle disorder. And I had no idea that that wasn't typical for a baby to do, because Beckham, again, was my very first baby. So as they were watching him, they were discussing things with each other. They were checking his eyesight, checking his muscle movements. And then the doctors went out of the room and they left Hunter and I alone for a few minutes, and they were basically just discussing Beckham. And then they came back into the room to discuss things with us. When Dr. O came back into the room, that was Beckham's main doctor. We still work with her to this day and we absolutely love her. She is a neurologist up at primary, so she specializes in function of the brain and brain development. And if you remember from my first video, which if you haven't seen that, this might not be making any sense to you, so I would highly recommend watching Beckham's first video. I will go ahead and link it down below for you guys. But in that first video, if you remember, I talked about Beckham getting a brain bleed. Well, when he got that brain bleed, Beckham is actually missing part of his brain. It's in the lower left, I believe. So that part of his brain where the blood basically got to has disintegrated and it didn't grow. And so he is technically missing a part of his brain. So he had a severe brain injury. When she came back into the room, she was, of course, re-explaining this brain injury to us that we were well aware of. And then she started explaining some of the movements that she noticed in Beckham that were atypical. And she told us, you know, that at this age and at this stage that they were able to recognize that he did receive a diagnosis of spastic cerebral palsy. I had thought that Hunter and I had been through so much up to that point that nothing would shock me anymore. But hearing this diagnosis and having that just set in stone really, really just destroyed me, to be honest. It was so challenging to hear that. I think that one of the reasons it was so difficult to hear the diagnosis is because of how unprepared I was for it and how uneducated I was about it. She started to explain what exactly cerebral palsy was and the way that it would affect Beckham throughout his life. So I'm actually gonna read the definition to you guys because I'm assuming that most people watching this video are just as uneducated as I was. So cerebral palsy is a condition marked by impaired muscle coordination and or other disabilities typically caused by damage to the brain before or at birth. And so as you can tell, this brain bleed that Beckham had received was a severe brain injury. So it was probably no shock to the doctors and really shouldn't have been such a shock to me that he had and was diagnosed with cerebral palsy really early on because of that brain bleed. There are different types of cerebral palsy, and you can have quadriplegic cerebral palsy or bioplegic cerebral palsy, and that's just referring to the number of limbs that cerebral palsy is going to affect. Fortunately for Beckham, he is only affected in his legs, and so he's considered a bioplegic. We view this as a huge blessing that he has full range of motion with his arms and that we don't notice up to this point any spastic or discoordination with his upper body. But of course, that's something that we pay very close attention to, and it's something that doctors are frequently checking for. There's also a couple different ways that the muscle tone can affect the body. You can have overtone or undertone. Overtone, the way that one of his doctors explained it, made it really simple for me to understand. It's like your muscles have an on and off switch. If you have overtone, it's like you're constantly flexing and you don't know how to turn the muscle off. If you have undertone, it would be the exact opposite, and it's like your muscles are always relaxed to relax and you don't know how to turn that muscle on. With Beckham, he has overtone in his legs. When he was really little, I noticed he had really stiff legs, like they seemed just really like strong to me, and that's because he has overtone in his legs. That would mean that Beckham's legs are always on, or that his muscles always seem to be flexed or stiff in his legs. So that can lead to an extreme difficulty when it comes to walking, sitting up, having your legs in any sort of position that requires any sort of flexibility. And as she was explaining this to us, she explained that they did a little test on him while they were watching him and just seeing what his ability was when he was laying on that play mat previously. And when they scored him, they were able to see that based off of his score, and this is called a hammer score, based off of that score, there was about a 97% chance that Beckham would never be able to learn how to walk. When I heard this, I was absolutely crushed. My heart broke into a million pieces for him, because obviously when you have a child, you want them to be able to experience life to the fullest. And my dream was that Beckham would be able to experience the world just as I did. I had a really difficult time absorbing this information purely for Beckham. I was devastated for him, and I didn't want him to grow up knowing that he had limited abilities. I think that everybody watching this can fully understand that. I also felt a lot of guilt because I didn't want anyone to ever think that I mourned him having a disability for myself or for my husband, but that I mourn it for him. And I would trade him places in a heartbeat so that he could experience the world the way that I do, and so that I could be limited instead of him. But I can't do that. And so as his mother, it's my job to make my world fit Beckham and not make Beckham fit the world. And so that's my goal, and I know with confidence that I'm gonna be able to do that, but it took me a while to gain the confidence that I have now. When we heard that news, I immediately broke down, and our sweet doctor gave Hunter and I a moment alone and just to kind of process the information, and then she said she'd come back in and answer any questions that we had. So when she left the room, I will never forget just the rock that Hunter was for me. He turned to me and he looked me right in the eyes and he said, "Rachel, in one ear and out the other." And that took so much strength, because no matter what he says, I know that this diagnosis broke his heart just like it did mine. I know that he dreamt of the same world for Beckham to have that I did, yet he had no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that Beckham would be able to learn how to walk, talk, eat, and do all of the things that Hunter and I can do, even if it looked a little bit differently. And I needed that hope, and I'm so grateful that he had all of the strength for both of us when I really needed it. I had had some previous experiences when I was pleading with God for Beckham to live, and I really felt like I had that plea with the contingency that he would be able to live a full life. And in my mind, that meant no disabilities. And I was so sorely mistaken, thinking that you couldn't live a full life with a disability. And I get emotional talking about that because of how naive I was. I was so wrong. Beckham has the most full life I've ever seen someone live, and he's only 2. I'm so grateful that I learned that lesson, and I'm gonna expand more on that, but I felt it was important in this video to talk about and recognize and remember that those who have different abilities than us, they see the world more beautifully than we'll ever be able to see it. The doctor then came back into the room, and Hunter had really just helped me get my emotions under control. And I'll never forget what she said to me. She told me that she wanted me to remember that I was walking out of that hospital with the same baby that I walked into the hospital with. Of course, my emotions and feelings towards Beckham did not change whatsoever, but my heart just ached for him, knowing or thinking that I knew that he wouldn't be able to experience all of the things that I was able to experience. And if you're a parent, you know that the most important thing in your life is giving your children the best life that they can live. And I would give him anything. On the car ride home, it was pretty quiet between Hunter and I. We talked a little bit about what we had just heard, but I think that we were still just really processing the information. And something that I do want to share is that when we were in the hospital, in that first week of his life that I really shared a lot of in my previous video, Hunter and I had talked about the possibility of Beckham being severely disabled. And I will be really blunt, I literally didn't care. I didn't care one bit if he was disabled at all. I was fully ready to dedicate my life to taking care of him. I love him so dearly. How could that ever matter to me? And all I cared was that he lived. All I cared was that I got to take him home. And from Hunter's point of view, he really wanted us to be careful, just like that doctor told me when she believed that Beckham was gonna die, that we didn't just continue doing things to him to keep him alive with no quality of life. And it was more difficult for Hunter to accept Beckham being severely disabled, again, not for Hunter's sake at all, but for Beckham's sake, than it was for me, because I was being more selfish. I wanted Beckham to live. I wanted him to stay here, and I didn't care what that looked like. Now that we were facing the reality of that 6 months into his life, Hunter and I just completely switched roles. Hunter was a rock and still is. And he has never once doubted Beckham being able to learn and grow and use his capabilities to the fullest extent of what that can look like for him. And he has truly just been my rock. I'm gonna say that so many times in this video, but it's just true. And I'm so grateful that he's my partner. I'm so grateful that he is Beckham's dad, because I couldn't do this without him, and he really has changed me for the better. When we got home for the next couple days, I was severely affected by his diagnosis. I cried myself dry. I seriously just cried and cried and cried and cried. And I would just look at this beautiful, perfect baby and just weep for the loss of the life I thought that he was going to have. And it destroyed me. Again, I just want to say that my sadness was for his loss, not for my loss. I didn't take a loss when he received that diagnosis. I still had this beautiful, perfect child, and now I know that I gained a perspective on life that I could never have if Beckham didn't have cerebral palsy. And I am so grateful for that. But of course, I wish that I could make things easy for him. I wish that he didn't have to work 3 times as hard as everybody else to do things that come naturally to us. I wish that I could give him strength in areas that he needs it. But the reality is that Beckham will forever give me more than I will ever be able to give him. And although that is so unfair, I am so blessed to have a child who serves me more than I'll ever be able to serve them. After a few days had passed, I really needed to overcome this. I really felt like I needed to be able to pick myself up and be the strong mother that I agreed to be for Beckham. And I had multiple conversations with Hunter, specifically about Beckham's ability to be able to hold his head up and learn how to sit up and learn how to walk. Because I want you to be mindful that at this time, Beckham quite literally couldn't do anything. All he could do was smile and laugh and respond to me in those nonverbal ways. But he was fully feeding through a G-tube and had no ability to feed himself or allow me to feed him. He also could not hold the weight of his own head. So for example, if I would try to put him in like a bumbo or a sit me up, his head would fall like this. And that of course really, really scared me. He wasn't able, of course, to sit up independently, and of course was too young to show any signs of being able to walk. He also had zero tolerance for tummy time, and he was unable to lift his head or move it side to side during tummy time and would just scream. Beckham also was so incredibly calm. So for us to put him in a situation like tummy time that caused him to be so upset to the point that he would cry was extremely abnormal for him and so hard for Hunter and I to deal with. It made me not want to push him and not want to do that because it literally ripped my heart into a million pieces. I had already endured so much that I was terrified of him associating anything negative with me. I just wanted to love on him because I had missed so much of his infancy because he was in the hospital. I ended up having a phenomenal conversation with one of our really, really good friends who is a beautiful mentor for me, who was heavily involved in Beckham's life from the day that he was born. And he's also a spiritual confidant for me. And I ended up having a conversation with him that just turned my emotions around on the entire situation, and it eliminated fear and gave me faith. So in combination of Hunter just being my rock and having conversation after conversation with me about Beckham being able to achieve all of these milestones regardless of what the medical field was saying, and then me also having that spiritual discussion with that really good friend, I was able to eliminate all fear and just move forward in faith. From that day forward, I literally dedicated my life to being Beckham's favorite therapist, and we worked countless hours on sitting up and being able to do tummy time, and I'll insert some videos and some clips if I can find them. But that diagnosis was given to us in January, and by February, we took Beckham back in for an appointment to check and see if Beckham was still aspirating when he swallowed, which is the original reason that he got the G-tube in the NICU. Because when he would swallow, his food would not go into his belly. It would go down like the wrong pipe, as we would refer to it, and it would go into his lungs. And we went in for that appointment, and we were told when he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy that it can severely affect how children are able to eat. And so, you know, there was a fear that he would be on a G-tube for the remainder of his life. And when we went to that appointment, I have never cried more happy tears, save the day I was given our discharge date in the NICU. But I was in absolute disbelief when Beckham passed with flying colors. Even the ultrasound technicians, they were doing an ultrasound on his throat to see if he was aspirating as they attempted to give him a bottle, and all of the liquid went down correctly and he did it phenomenal. He passed with flying colors. Even the ultrasound techs were shocked and were like, okay, let's do it again. And he just kept doing it, and we left that appointment and they told us that we could immediately switch to 100% bottle feeding. And that for me, you guys, like, my child had never eaten by mouth, and I was so happy and so excited. And so we went home, and my little champion immediately started taking bottles, and and we were able to almost completely eliminate the G-tube, and by August, so he received the cerebral palsy diagnosis in January. We were told he could bottle feed in February, and he was completely off the G-tube by August. So that was just phenomenal and a huge blessing, and just an example of how hard he works, because everything he does is difficult for him. Eating for him is like exercise for us. It was really, really difficult, and even when I pushed him, he just handled it with so much grace, and he was always willing to work so incredibly hard. And I'm just so proud of him. So to this day, he still does not have a G-tube in, and he eats by mouth. And of course, that looks a little bit different than a typical 2-year-old. He's very, very sensitive to texture, and we're just continuing to work with a feeding therapist, and he also sees a nutritionist, and we're just continuing to push him in ways that we are able to while still having him eat enough and continuing to progress in that area. So that is so exciting. Another thing that he drastically improved on was tummy time. I was dedicated. No matter how hard it was for me, I had to remember that his way of communicating that he didn't like something was through crying. And if he was crying from being on his belly, that didn't mean that he was in pain. That didn't mean that he was hurting. That just meant that I was hurting and that I was in pain. And I needed to push him. The doctors constantly reminded me that the more I could push him, the more independent he would become. And that was obviously hard for me, but I was dedicated to being able to look at him when he was older in life and knowing that all of the hard work and the tears that I shed would pay off for him and allowing him to have a better life, and that I would push him and that I would not do everything for him. And that's been hard. But of course, he receives so much love from me, but it's hard to find that balance between being his mom and being his therapist, because I have to be both. And I've come to terms with that, and I'm okay with that now, but it took a while for me to get there because it hurt me. It hurt me being the one who had to push him. But I'm really grateful now that I have, because of all the progress that we've seen. And of course, all of that credit goes to him. I am so proud of him. He is so amazing. He works so hard, and he worked hard and always has without complaining. He never complains. He has a spirit unlike any other. And if you know him, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He is so sweet and so kind and is so loving and always wants to cuddle and play, but when it's time to work, he just sits there and does it. I'm so proud of him, and you're gonna hear me say that a million times in this video, and that's okay, because someday when he looks back and watches this, I want him to know that he is so amazing and that he inspires me every day, and I'm sure he inspires you. So I apologize, I kind of went off course there for a second, but back to tummy time. He has improved so much with tummy time. He was able to hold his head up in February of 2020, so at the same time that we were told that he could bottle feed. So that was a massive improvement in just 1 month from his diagnosis. And then we slowly started working on sitting up independently, and he really had to work so incredibly hard on sitting up, and still does to this day. His balance is very, very difficult for him, and he's also unable to put his legs in a typical sitting position that most babies would sit in because of his limited ability to be flexible in his legs with that overtoned muscle. And so we stretch him diligently every day. We were taught how to do stretches for him. And so we go to the gym every day, and he absolutely hates it, but he lets us do it anyway and is a little champion. And we also work on tummy time constantly. We have a rule in our house that he's only on his back to go to sleep, and that has really, really helped him. Just time on his belly has allowed him to explore and actually learn how to not only hold his head up on his tummy, but he is able to scoot forward. He learned how to do that after he learned how to scoot backwards. So when he first started exploring more on his belly and getting a little bit more mobile, he would like scoot his little bum backwards. It's so cute. And he didn't know how to scoot forward because he doesn't have a lot of strength in his arms. So one day in December, I was going to grab him because he had scooted backwards towards the Christmas tree and was kind of underneath it, so I wanted to move him. And as I went to pick him up, he like took his little elbows and did like a little army crawl forward, and I freaked out. I totally freaked out. I had never seen him do anything like that before. And ever since that day, he is like my little army crawler. He just scoots and scoots and scoots with his elbows on his belly. He can explore all over our house, which is so cool. He loves different textures. So if I place him on a rug, he will army crawl over to the hardwood to scratch the hardwood and feel it, or he'll army crawl over to the wall and scratch the wall, scratch different cupboards, scratch the couch, air vents, all sorts of things. So that's been really fun to watch him be able to be mobile in his own way and scoot on his elbows, because he's not quite able to put strength like all the way in his arms to get to a crawling position, but that's okay. And I know and have faith that all we need is time. Time is on our side, and I'm willing to wait because he's willing to wait, and he's really taught me how to be patient. The biggest win that we've had and the most exciting win that we've had is Beckham learning how to sit up. So this actually came about in the absolute coolest way. So I want to share this story with you guys. As I told you before, we had that neonatal follow-up clinic that we would go to every 3 months, and they would tell us how Beckham was doing, and they would give him another hammer score, and basically that was just testing his abilities and seeing where he was at with his development. Well, once he turned 2, they transferred his care from the neonatal follow-up clinic to a cerebral palsy specialist at Primary Children's Hospital. I was so incredibly nervous to go to this appointment with the cerebral palsy specialist for the first time, because I would have to work up like so much courage just to go to the neonatal follow-up clinic appointments, because I really got good at living in my own world with Beckham. I never compared him to other children, and I also protected myself from seeing things that made me sad. And I learned that that was okay, that I could only process as quickly as I could process. And I didn't want to put myself in positions where I was reminded of his inability to do things. I wanted a positive outlook, and I wanted to be faithful at all times. And so sometimes it was difficult to deal with the more medical side of things. But I learned how to handle that, and I learned how to manage that. So when our care got transferred, I was really nervous to go to another big appointment where we were gonna talk about what his future looked like and where he was at. I was just scared. And so Hunter and I talked about whether Hunter wanted to come to this appointment with me or not, and he really did, but I told him that I would prefer that he work and that I felt strong enough to go by myself. So I packed Beckham up and we went up to Primary Children's, and this was actually just a month ago. Right now it's July of 2021, so this appointment was in June. It was for his 2-year appointment. And when that doctor walked into the room, the light that she carried immediately changed the room. The second that she entered, I knew that this was going to be the most positive, uplifting appointment, and boy was I right. In that appointment, we talked all about how there was absolutely no scenario in which Beckham, Hunter, me, and Blakely didn't end up so incredibly happy with our lives and the outcome of what Beckham could do. And that positivity gave me so much hope. And when I left that appointment, I called Hunter and I said, I will forever want to be for Beckham what that doctor just was for me. And it was just pure hope and light. She told me about all of the incredible things that Beckham was going to be able to do. She told me that we were going to create a world that fit Beckham, and that we would never try and make Beckham fit into the world. She talked to me about preschool for Beckham and what that would look like. She talked to me about him being able to sit up and be mobile in his own way, and all of the doctors and people that would help me. And she eliminated so much fear of the unknown. And I needed that. I needed that light and that hope, and I am forever grateful for her. And she gets to follow Beckham until he's 18, which is so cool. I get to see her every 3 months for her to lift my spirits and love on my baby and tell me how incredible he is. And I am just so grateful for people in the medical field who do that. And I actually got a message from a nurse when I uploaded my last video about how grateful she was about the way that I talked about my nurses at the NICU. And if you're in the medical field watching this, I just want you to know how loved you are and how much you contribute to the lives of parents of children with special needs. One thing that our cerebral palsy specialist told us when we were in that appointment was how to get a good prediction on whether Beckham was going to be able to learn how to walk or not. In my heart and in my soul, I know with a surety that my son is going to learn how to walk. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know when that's going to be, but I will forever be the person that believes in him the most, the person that has the most faith. And I don't care if there are days or time frames in his life where I am literally the only person on earth who believes these things, but I will never stop believing in him. So I do carry that belief with me at all times, but I'm obviously only human. And when I'm in medical situations and with medical professionals, I do like to ask what the science says, what the predictions look like, and what we're looking at when it comes to him and the predictions that we can make based off of what he's able to do right now. And she was able to share with me that a great prediction on if children will be able to walk or not can be based on their ability to sit up. If they are able to independently sit by the time they are 2 years old, then that's a great prediction that they will be able to walk. And if they are not able to independently sit up by the time they are 4 years old, then that's a really great prediction that they are not going to be able to walk. So when she told me this, I just thought, okay, you know, Beckham is not able to sit independently and he's gonna be 2 like next week. I was thinking this back in June when our appointment was. And I just thought, I've got 2 years. And that's what she told me. She was like, Rachel, you have 2 years for him to be able to learn how to sit up and be in that category of he might be able to learn how to walk. We just don't know exactly what that's gonna look like. And so I held on to that hope and I thought, you know what? I've got 2 years and I know what God's told me and I know what I believe and I know what belief can do. And Beckham is the hardest worker I've ever seen in my life. And if he believes in himself and he wants to walk, he will learn how to walk. And so I just left that hospital with fire underneath me and belief in my heart that he was going to be able to learn how to walk, as I had always believed, regardless of that prediction. And that doctor really, really helped me remain so positive, even though he wasn't independently sitting yet. So the very next day, we were at a physical therapy appointment that he goes to weekly, and he actually got to try to walk in a gait trainer for the first time. And it was so cool. He got in this little walker and he was able to push himself, and his therapist and I were ecstatic. So we wanted to order him one to have here at our house. And while we were doing that, I had taken Beckham out of the gait trainer and he was sitting between my legs. So I was around him so that when he would like tip over, I would catch him. And this is how we practice sitting up all the time. Well, that particular day, when he was sitting up between my legs, he just didn't fall over. And my therapist and I, after a minute, were like, Beckham is still sitting up. What in the world? So I just kind of slowly started inching away from him so that he kind of knew that I wasn't next to him anymore. And he sat up for the rest of our therapy appointment. I was freaking out. I get in the car, I'm like calling Hunter, oh my gosh, like I'm coming home right now, you're gonna freak out, I cannot wait to show you this. And so when I got home, I showed Hunter and Beckham sat up for him again, and he likes to sit like crisscross applesauce with his legs. And from that day forward, I was like, we are sitting up every second of every day. I'm like a crazy person, but I was like, I'm taking this and I'm running with it. I could see all of his potential. And I have a pregnancy pillow, so I will circle my pregnancy pillow around him where it's not touching him at all, but if he tips over, then he will just land on a pillow so that I don't have to be right there with him every time I have him sitting up, because that obviously limits the amount of time we're able to do it for. And since that day, so the day after that appointment with his specialist, Beckham has set new records for himself almost daily when it comes to independent sitting, and he now can sit up independently on any surface for over an hour, which is mind-blowing. I never could have even imagined him sitting up a month and a half ago. And I know for a fact that God reserved that timing for a reason, The fact that I went to that appointment and was given that prediction for walking in the medical field, and then the next day, Beckham was able to sit up independently. Even if it's in crisscross applesauce position, we always knew that it might look a little differently for him or might have to be very specific for him. I know that that is no coincidence that we went to that appointment and the very next day, he was able to sit independently. I feel like God gave us that and blessed us with our spiritual beliefs, with him being able to walk, that we were generously blessed with that being in alignment with the medical field, because I can say confidently that rarely do my spiritual promptings and feelings align with what we're told medically, and that's okay, because I know that God is to create situations for miracles to take place. And I am here to tell you and testify that my son will be a walking, living miracle for the rest of his life. And what a privilege it is to be his mother and get to talk about that and share that with the rest of the world. As of right now, every day looks like at-home therapy for us, and I would love to vlog for you guys and take you through a day or even a week of what Beckham's life looks like, what we work on a daily basis, what he gets to do on a daily basis. I think it would be so fun for you guys to be able to watch him and observe him while he's working on all of these things that are absolute miracles in themselves. There are so many possibilities with cerebral palsy. There are so many options that we have when it comes to his disability. We are currently stretching him and stretching his legs, and that is helping with the overtone and the muscle. We also are getting injections for the first time in August. It's amazing that we haven't had to get injections until this point. But what the injections are is they are Botox that will go into the muscle and partially relax the muscle so that he's able to be more flexible in his legs, and that should help him with sitting up, with walking, and all sorts of things. So we are so excited for the ability to get him injections and what they're going to do for him. We aren't looking forward to him having to actually get poked and injected every 3 months, but we are so grateful for modern medicine and the ability that we have to be able to do that for him. If I'm allowed to, I will try and vlog when he gets the injections done, maybe not the actual injecting of it, but I will try to vlog that day and share with you guys what that process is like. And I am so excited to document how it helps him. Down the road, we are continuing to watch for the need for surgery, because they can also go in and perform surgery on his muscles to help with the tone. We haven't gotten to that step yet, so I'm not as educated in that part of the process. But as I learn more about it, and if it ever becomes necessary, I will share that with you guys. So let me know in the comments below if you guys do want to see a day in the life or a week in the life of Beckham and everything that he does and everything that he works on. He has so many different doctors. I would love to share that part of our life with you guys. I can't thank you enough for watching this video and for sticking around to watch Beckham's journey. It means the absolute world to me, and I am so lucky to be in this position, to have a super baby, to have a child that sees life more beautifully than any of us will ever be able to see it. Thank you so much for sharing in all of that love for him with me. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, and it will also make it so you're notified when I upload. And I will be sharing a lot of Beckham's life in future vlogs and future videos. So thank you so much for making it such a safe place to be able to do that. I love you guys, and I will see you back for the next one. Bye.